Thanks for tuning in.
What is going on, you guys? It's your boy Joe Castro, aka Philly Fresco, joined as always, I'm gonna change it up, by my boy Shaky B. And it is Philly the podcast. Now, you guys are probably asking, why did I say Shaky B instead of Brandon? Because we have another Brandon today. So I didn't want to confuse myself mainly, but we do have a very special guest. Brandon, how's it going today, man?
It's going good, guys. We're 1 week away from the draft. I'm excited. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. So before we talk any, draft or rumors or anything like that, let them know, for the maybe 2 or 3 people that might not know who you are, let them know where they can find you and just support your work. Yeah,
just go to bleedinggreennation.com. All the good stuff is there. Obviously, check out the Bleeding Green Nation podcast feed. I'm on Twitter too, at Brandon Gowton. And that's really all you need to know.
Very simple, very cut and dry. I love it. So let's hop right into it, man. I know you're a busy man. So this offseason, I feel like, has just been a bunch of rumors swirling around. 1 week we want this guy, 1 week we want that guy. As you said, we're 1 week out, So now that we are 1 week out, looking back, what are some of the things that maybe we can believe, maybe we can't believe? What is the perception at this point, really?
Yeah, it's funny. So we've probably heard about every rumor about what the Eagles could do, right? Like, oh, they're looking to trade back up. Oh, they're looking to trade down, actually. Oh, I'm going to throw it out there and just say, hey, they're just going to stay at 12. There we go. So we have all the bases covered of what they can possibly do. But, that's what any course of the, pre-draft season you're going to get. All the rumors thrown out there, smoke screens, what have you. I think the Eagles are most likely to stay at 12. That's just my feeling. I could be wrong. I just feel like, they make this move down, and clearly they don't do that unless they have some kind of happiness, right, with the players they're going to get there. Otherwise, if you really love someone, then why do you move down from 6? So that's just how I think about it. I feel like they're going to stay, make the pick of the best player available. At least maybe that's what I'm hoping they do, and I'm kind of like willing that into existence. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I mean, what is your thoughts on this whole offseason in general? Like, I could only imagine how he's going to do next week, just to kind of put the cherry on top as to, I think it's like the wildest offseason I've ever experienced as an Eagles fan.
Yeah, it's certainly one where I feel like more than ever, not to bring it down, guys, but like I feel more disillusioned with the team than ever, just because, look, they're coming off this rough year. We've had multiple bad off seasons now. It's a shame because I think we all want to look at the Super Bowl as like this affirmation of this team knows what they're doing, like they can get back on top. But the way things have gone since then, it's like, well, maybe the Super Bowl was kind of the outlier there, and they don't really always know what they're doing. So, I think this front office has a lot to prove. You're seeing these reports come out about how, Howie Roseman basically isn't able to get everyone pulling in the same direction, about how Jeffrey Lurie is stepping in. So there's a lot to prove. This is critical. They couldn't do anything in free agency, right? Like they had no cap space, so they couldn't really add anyone too exciting. I think the Anthony Harris deal is fine. I think the Eric Wilson deal is fine. But, they're one-year deals. These aren't like building blocks necessarily. The next great Eagles era of football is going to have to be built through the draft, and this is the opportunity to do it. They have the most picks in the draft.
Now, I want to ask you this because, like you said, we are going to have to be building through the draft. We did get another first-round pick, but I do want to bring it a little bit back to the draft, the trade. How were you feeling about that when that actually happened? I mean, it was very early. But, we did get decent compensation, I guess, if you look at it. So just overall, what were your thoughts then, and maybe did they change now?
Yeah, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It's funny because I actually wrote a couple of weeks before the trade happened, I didn't love the idea of moving down just because, number one, this team needs more blue chip talent. Like they don't have who are the stars, the real stars on this team, and their best players that they do have, Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelsey, they're older. I don't know if they're going to be around, or I don't know if they're going to be in peak form the next time this team is really ready to go make a run. So to me, I wanted to stay at 6 and get that blue chip talent. Now, with that said, I mean, you get a first round pick and you have that optionality, like how Sam Hinkie used to say. I think Howie Roseman kind of alluded to that. I mean, that sets them up to where they can pivot in terms of the quarterback. Like if Jalen Hurts doesn't work out, they can trade up next year. Maybe they can trade for a veteran. We'll see what becomes of Deshaun Watson. Russell Wilson is out there. They have different options. I do like that part of it, to be able to move on to something or best case scenario, let's say Jalen Hurts does work out, well, then you have multiple first-round picks to kind of build around him and build this core. So I do like it in terms of having different options, but here's the thing. Like, you have to make the most of those options. You can't just keep doing what you're doing and blowing all these picks. So it might work out. I can see the potential of the move, but, I mean, they don't get the benefit of the doubt from me just yet.
Yeah, do you think the move was premature? Do you think that we could have maybe got more?
So that's a great question, right? Because now we're hearing Miami might trade down from number 6, which is where the Eagles are. It's crazy. It's like, oh my gosh. So I think that's definitely like one of the biggest questions to ask with that trade is like, did they make this move too soon? Now I get there's kind of like pressure at the point of that because it was kind of a multi-team deal. There's moving pieces there, and you wanted to jump in and make sure you got that offer. And there's no guarantee if you wait that you do get a first-round pick in the future, and that's pretty valuable. So there is pressure to jump on it. It's not just like you had to wait and sit back. There's an impetus there to really make that move in that time. But it's going to be interesting, right? If we see the Dolphins trade back, let's say the Patriots at 15, the Bears at 20, Washington football team at 19. If one of those teams makes like a big move up to number 6, then it's going to be pretty tough. It's going to be a tough look for the Eagles.
Especially if we move back up too. It'll be like, what did this? What just happened here? What happened in Philly? I want to piggyback a little bit off of what you were talking about with Jalen Hurts. You said, if best case scenario, if he proves to be good. I want to ask you this because I've been asking Brandon, I've been asking myself, since we let go of Carson Wentz. What is his bar? What does he really have to do in order to win this front office over? Because I feel like no matter what, we've proven that we're going to still go out there and make a QB competition. So what do you necessarily think he has to do to really win this over?
I think it's tough for him, to be honest. I think this front office in a lot of ways isn't convinced on him. So the way I've kind of coined it in my mind is like he has to pretty much leave no doubt like that he's the guy. If there's any kind of doubt, like if it's kind of like gray area, then they're probably going to pivot. And that doesn't necessarily mean like, they're going to cut him or trade him or he's off the team, but it means they're going to like start looking at other options if there's any kind of doubt that he is the guy. And obviously having those picks again gives them the ammo to go do that. So I think if it's anything less than convincing, then Jalen Hurts, they're going to look to try to pivot from him in some way. And that's kind of tough because Jalen Hurts really isn't set up to succeed this year. Like in the most, they're not trying to maximize him because they have a lot of holes on the roster. And so I think it's kind of a tough scenario he's in. But if he kind of, it's in a good way, like on the positive side of it, if he thrives in spite of all that, well, then he's the guy.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that bar is going to be close to near impossible. I liked how he was able to compose himself last year when he had Carson Wentz breathing down his neck. But now you're going into a season where you're pretty much still a rookie. You got a rookie head coach. You got a rookie offensive coordinator. You got all these different pieces that they're all brand new. And he's going to have a tough go, especially Joe has talked about it. Next year, that'll be year 3 for him, like after this season. So then you're going to start talking, is he going to want contract extensions and all that kind of stuff? So it's really, if Hurts is the guy, Hurts is the guy for the future, I would assume.
I'm hoping that he's at least pretty good at, rock, paper, scissors, shoot, because that seems to be, a very important thing here, a stratego or something like that. We got to find his board game. So I want to transfer over a little bit because people are asking about the draft as well. I watched one of your interviews. I'm blanking on the name of the podcast, but I watched it that you did not too long ago. You were pretty high on a certain wide receiver, but I want to ask you at number 12, how are you feeling? What are the options at number 12 now that we're here?
I mean, it's really hard for me to not be like cynical and be like, look at what the Eagles have done. Well, in general, that's a blanket statement, but especially what the Eagles have done in the first round under Howie Roseman. And that's 7 out of their last 9 first round picks are either offensive linemen or defensive linemen. We know that's how they like to build. We know this is Howie Roseman coming from the Andy Reid school of thought, just even this organization. That's their philosophy. The 2 exceptions in there were Carson Wentz, quarterback, who they traded up for, and then last year, Jalen Reagor. And we saw how that worked out for them. So I just think, like, part of me believes they just kind of want to, like, play the hits, get back to knowing what works for them, which in general has been, their most success has been going in the trenches. And in theory, I think that's where you should build. But in the context of this specific draft, I just think that Devontae Smith is my guy. I think he is going to be available there at number 12. Maybe I'm just wishing it into reality, but that's the pick I want to see. I think that makes the most sense for this team. Don't overthink it. There isn't a world where the Eagles pass on the Heisman winner and that works out well for them, right? Like, we all know if they do that, we're going to hear that on WIP for the next, 20 years.
Exactly.
And
yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. I was just going to say, and speaking of wide receivers, I mean, we've heard Nick Sirianni talk multiple times now, and he gets excited when he talks about the offense, about wide receivers. What are your initial early thoughts on our new head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Nick Sirianni is a good head coach or not. No one does. We've yet to see, but man, did that guy have energy. He brings the juice. And a lot of people, I think, look at it and they're like, oh, this is kind of like a gimmick or whatever. I mean, or, they just don't love it. I think he's being authentic. I think that matters. I don't think he's not faking that. He's not like a fake rah-rah guy trying to tune this up, get, people juiced. That's just who he is. And if he's being who he is, I feel like players are going to respect that at some level. It's just who he is. It's his personality. Now, I will say, he's got to know when to tune that down, because he can't just be like that on all the time. There's a time and place where I think, veteran players especially kind of might just be like, all right, who's this guy? Always this hyper, let's calm down a little bit. We need to relax. So I think part of Nick Sirianni, the negativity around him is kind of being colored through how we all feel about the front office, which isn't really fair, to Nick Sirianni. And I get it. I understand that, because you don't feel good about the decisions are made by the people who hired him. But I think if we're just judging him on his own merits, I think he's been fine so far. He's a lot to prove as a head coach. We've never seen it before, but I have some level of hope for him. Whereas I'm much more down on the front office, I think Nick Sirianni, I'm willing to give him a chance.
Yeah, I think people are making way too much. And I've made the joke of the rock, paper, scissors, shoe, but I think it's awesome, to be honest. We need that at the very least. We're going to be a very young team. You know what I'm saying? We talked to, I think it was Dave Spadaro that was saying that youth might really, really help this young team. So bring it on. If you talk the junk in the press conferences, I want to see you, walk the walk when those games come. So I'm excited to see him out there. I think, like you said, at the very least, he got the juice. So we'll see what happens. We will definitely see what happens. I think I'm more excited about this defense, but I want to ask you something about just Howie and him. It's not necessarily about Howie. It's more so about him. When I watch these press conferences, I see Howie. Maybe it's just me and maybe it's more hopeful eyes, but I see him kind of, throwing questions more at Nick Sirianni, maybe more than I've seen a little bit in past years. Do you think that's real? Do you think that Howie's maybe taking a little bit of a back seat to Nick Sirianni and this coaching staff?
I think he's definitely aware of perception. That is something Howie Roseman definitely cares about, and that's it's even been reported. So I definitely think it's a conscious effort. He doesn't want to make it look like it's all about him, him making all the decisions and everything. But I mean, in reality, it is. That's part of the problem. And I don't think it's terrible to have that guy. The Eagles talk about collaboration all the time, but I don't think they actually do real collaboration. Their version of collaboration is different people are kind of making decisions here and there. Jeffrey Lurie is making the JJ Arthega-Whiteside pick, but then the coaching staff is making the Jalen Reagor pick. There's all these different voices that are kind of, and there's no one process where it's all right, this guy at the top, he's making the final decision. And I think it's fine to have multiple voices weigh in. That is collaboration. Get the information from different people, but then you have to be able to explain to those people, hey, we're not going with this decision, and here's why, or we are, and here's why. And I just don't think that's happening. It feels like the decision-making process is flawed in the building, and not all the departments, the analytics department, the scouting department, the coaching staff, they're not all necessarily pulling in the same direction. That's not to say that, they all have to agree all the time and there's never going to be differences, but at the end of the day, they have to respect each other and at least understand each other, understand the motivation behind certain decisions. And it doesn't seem like that's happening, and that falls on Howie. He's at the top. He has to get everyone on the same page.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's so depressing just kind of talking. we were talking because we were doing this mock draft series, and we spoke to a guy that's a Bears fan and has been covering the Bears for a while. And even his perception of their front office, they have this whole thing where it's family, and they get the wrong guys making football moves. And I feel like maybe sometimes that kind of related to the Eagles in a sense, where a guy like Howie, who he's never really been in the trenches or really is a football guy and going off analytics and stuff. So it's just depressing a little bit. But to kind of get on some brighter side here, what's a young player that you think could really step up this year?
I think that's part of the tough thing about the Eagles. Like, it's just like, how do you feel good about the future when there aren't these young players to really feel amazing about? I mean, there isn't anyone really that jumps out to mind that I'm like, yes, I 100% fully just believe in this guy. There's guys I still think you can't rule out. I mean, like Jalen Reagor only turned, I believe, 22 earlier this year. I think he's probably, better than we saw last year. I think he has more to offer than that. But I mean, I feel like we probably felt the same way about JJ Arcega-Whiteside, right? Howie Roseman did when he talked about J-Jaw last year. He was like, we haven't seen the best of him yet. And well, he was pretty bad last year too, and couldn't even get on the field. So maybe a new coaching staff kind of makes the difference. I definitely think that could be a point of hope for people, is to look at like, okay, this coaching staff might be better at developing the players on the roster. I guess I could bring up Travis Fulgham. I do have some level of hope for him. I think what he showed when he was having that stretch where he led the NFL in receiving for 4 weeks. Like, I feel like we kind of just forget about that because it was so crazy, because he does that. And then Alshon Jeffrey's playing over him. It's ridiculous. But like, and there are some things there with Travis Fulgham where I think some of it was his fault. I don't want to say like he did nothing to get benched. It seemed like there kind of may have been like work ethic concerns in there and motivation issues. But maybe the new coaching staff kind of figures that out, and he can be your X receiver, and that'd be great. So I guess it might be him. It might be Travis Fulgham who I have the most hope for.
Yeah, I think our offensive line has some good youth. You know what I mean? I think that's the only coach that I really like have faith in moving forward so much. He's been here forever, and he has not like let me down. That's my uncle right there. I'm just gonna call him my uncle. So now we've done our mock draft series, and a question that we continuously ask everybody is the best and worst case scenario. So one of the last things I want to kind of go over is, what do you think would be the best case and worst case scenario for the Eagles come that first round pick?
So the best case scenario to me is Devontae Smith. That's my guy. A lot of people are like, oh, he's too skinny. He weighs 166. To me, I'm like, where do you see the weight concerns manifest themselves? Because he didn't get hurt, so you can't tell me like he's not super durable. And sure, the NFL is a little different, but like, again, he's playing in the SEC. He's playing at Alabama. I also just think when you watch him play, it's not like this guy is taking like major shots. I think he's always been smaller, so I think he's played the game knowing he has to play a certain way and protect himself, and I think he knows how to do that. And I also look at how he has some of the best numbers. I think he was like a top 5 in terms of like beating the press. So you can't just tell me like he can't get off the press, because he did that. I mean, he dominated the SEC for a national championship at Alabama. He was like the best receiver on the team, or at least one of the most productive among other great players, even going back like Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs and everyone, Calvin Ridley, like all these guys. So I just think, to me, that's my guy. I feel really good about him. That's the best case scenario for me. I feel like it's kind of like the Justin Jefferson thing. Like, just don't overthink it. Worst case scenario for me would probably be the Eagles taking like Kwity Paye at number 12. I just think this defensive end class, there isn't even like necessarily a consensus guy at the top. And I just don't think it's really a special kind of defensive end class. I mean, you're looking at Kwity Paye's profile here. He's 11.5 sacks. He had 2 last year. Obviously, only played in 4 games, and only 1 forced fumble in his college career. Like, I just don't love that. He also, I believe, he'll be 23 in November, so a little bit older for a rookie. I know Devontae Smith is similar age, but I just think Smith is much more of a proven product at that age, where Paye, you're kind of just projecting with the athleticism and everything. So that's my best case and worst case.
I respect that. Now, how would you feel about a quarterback getting picked? That's what I gotta ask.
The QB factory, I just don't. I don't think it's realistic. I just think that, especially the way this organization thinks, I don't think there's such a thing as like a value quarterback. It's like, oh, this guy is on the board and we didn't expect that. I don't think that's like how it works. First of all, I think 5 quarterbacks, I think the big 5 could be gone before the Eagles even pick there at 12. I don't think anyone's going to fall. There's some thought that maybe Justin Fields does. I don't think so. even if he does, I think if the Eagles, liked any of those guys, they would have just stayed at 6. Like they would have done that. I think, they reportedly had interest in Zach Wilson if they could get him. They clearly couldn't, probably going number 2. Trevor Lawrence going number 1. So I just think, the guys that they like, the guys that they think are franchise quarterbacks, I just don't think they exist to them, to the Eagles. Like that's not how they value these guys.
Well, I hope so. Now, the final question I want to ask both of you guys, because someone asked me this and I really couldn't answer it. So now I'm going to put the heat on you guys. Do you guys, I know it's early, it's before the draft, but right now, do you think that the Philadelphia Eagles are a better team than when the season ended? Or do you think they're worse?
You want to go first?
Oh, wow. You could say that we maybe got a little bit better. And by that, I mean, you got rid of like that toxic energy in a sense. I'm not saying that Carson Wentz was toxic. I'm not saying that Doug Peterson was just kind of there. But now you got that kind of like out of the room. You got that distraction out of the room. You bring in guys like an Anthony Harris. We do need help with our safeties and defensive backs. We lost Malcolm Jenkins a couple years ago, so we're still trying to replace that energy. We lost Jalen Mills this year to the Patriots. So, I mean, bringing him in, that's good. And then, I mean, that's Joe Flacco. Is that?
Yeah, I would say it's not like they lost anyone, right? Like major, but they also did. I mean, unless you can say Carson Wentz, that's a whole different story. And if you're assuming the Carson Wentz of last year, then they didn't really lose anyone important. But I also don't really think they added anyone that moves the needle at all. So I would almost say like same, because like I don't think they really changed either way. And part of the problem with like not losing anyone, like they didn't have anyone to lose because their roster was not good. So. I think that's why, free agency and really the whole offseason has kind of just been there's no juice. There's no juice to this offseason, really, other than like the Wentz trade, which is, multiple months ago now, because they couldn't add anyone. And now there is juice now with the draft and who they're able to add and actually kind of try to make some improvements here. And again, said it earlier, but most picks in the draft. So there's some hope there. There's some excitement, to be had with that. But yeah, I think they're kind of just the same team. And that was not a very good team. That's a team last year that only beat like, who are the quarterbacks we're talking about? Like Ben DiNucci, Daniel Jones.
Barely,
these are the guys that beat last year. Yeah, it's just not good.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that I feel like what Brandon said. I do feel like maybe energy-wise, maybe, like the locker room will feel a little bit better, because I know a lot of people who say, they hate the organization. But we were able to keep some veterans that honestly probably could have got paid somewhere else if they really, wanted to leave. So I'm not too upset with the offseason. I'm actually a little surprised we even got anybody. But to say that we got better maybe is a little homer of a statement. So I'm kind of with you guys. Maybe at the most a little bit better, but yeah, we're probably around the same. But I mean, hey, we'll see what happens after the draft. I know I'm excited. I know everybody's excited. But listen, Brandon, I appreciate you just coming on here, man, chopping shop with us, man. It was a lot of fun. We'll have to do this again once the draft is over, and hopefully it'll be happy. Hopefully we'll be talking about how we got Smith or something like that.
I hope so, man. And guys, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Let's definitely do it again.
Awesome.
Definitely, man. Have a great one, brother.
Take it easy, guys.
What's going on, everybody? John Dornbos here at the Philadelphia Eagles. I want to say thank you to all the great fans in my journey of holding the most consecutive games in Philadelphia Eagles history with 162. And with that, let's give a shout out to the Philly podcast and Philly Fresco. May all you rock on, baby. Hey, I'm John Dornbos. Go Birds.